Thank you for this invitation. There's not a lot of time, so I'm just going to skip through some of the points that I wanted to raise, and I know that there will be time for a conversation afterwards. So this presentation relates to outcomes and impact of equality initiatives at the University of Sussex. But I would say that many of the initiatives that I'm talking about will be common to or familiar with universities in the UK generally, and also indeed some universities in other sectors around the world. Next slide, please. In Sussex, we have a strategic plan with 4 elements. Equal Sussex, which is about reducing the gap in representation, experience, progression, and reward. What we mean by that is the gap between people with different identities, men and women, disabled people and non-disabled people, people with different racial and ethnic heritages. And that's representation in, for example, the professoriate or in various subject disciplines, and also progression and reward, both pay reward and progression, both pay reward and also awarding, so degree awards. Wherever there is disparity or gaps, Equal Sussex's ambition is to eliminate it. Diverse Sussex is really a recognition of the value that we place on difference, and that it really goes beyond the concept of equality in asserting that there is an inherent value in having people with different identities and different backgrounds in the university. Accessible Sussex is focused on ensuring that all disabled people, regardless of their impairments, regardless of their disabilities, are included. And flexible Sussex is particularly important in a time of COVID, but always important anyway, which is about ensuring that people's own individual needs in the way that they work is reflected, whether it's at home, part-time at home, or altering their working hours or whatever. Next slide, please. We have specific targets. I won't go through them all, but they're set out there to halve the gender pay gap by 2024. That's the. I should, however, say that the pay gap is not the amount that we pay individuals, because that has to be fair. Men and women can't be paid differently for doing the same job. That's direct discrimination. But that's when you take a look at the picture overall, whether overall women on average are being paid less than men. And it is the case in Sussex, as in many institutions, that there is a pay gap, and we have a target to halve it. We have targets relating to how staff feel about working at the university, representation and awarding gaps, which is the point I mentioned earlier about degree attainment. Who does well, who gets a good degree, a first or a 2-1. Next slide, please. There's a bit more detail about the gender pay gap there. We are also beginning to think about ethnicity and disability pay gaps. And there's a bit more detail there about improving the culture really at Sussex and how people feel. Next slide, please. We introduced an HR human rights portal earlier this year, and that's has been very helpful for us in understanding the demographics of our senior leadership team. And through that, and my own view about data is it's critically important in driving forward EDI, both quantitative data and qualitative data. And the evidence base that we are planning to have, that we currently have, but that we're planning to have, will create a richer picture for us. It will give us more information about the actual knowledge and experience in Sussex, and therefore what we need to do to address it. Next slide, please. So we also commit to and undertake various charters. Charters are systemic change program. Some of these are ones that we developed at Equality Challenge Unit, which is the organization that I ran a few years ago. And I'm just going to run through those briefly. Race Equality Charter is one to address systemic underrepresentation and disadvantage faced by minoritized ethnic groups in England. It's relatively new. It's only been around for about 5 or 6 years. Numbers of universities are participating in it. Athena Swan is a much longer standing initiative. It was originally a charter to address the underrepresentation of women in senior academic positions in STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, maths, and medicine. But a few years ago, it was extended to cover all subject disciplines. And Sussex has an ambition to hold awards for all of its schools. At the moment, it has an institutional award, but we're seeking awards for all of its schools. The Stonewall Workplace Equality Index is an instrument that seeks to address the needs of LGBTQ+ people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and queer people. It's one that Sussex is a member of, and the way that they operate it, amongst other things, is to have an equality index which lists employers in regard to how well they do in that space. And we are looking to become a top 100 employer. And we're also looking to become a disability confident leader. This is a government scheme which looks to good practice in the employment of disabled people. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to run through the Race Equality Charter. At the moment, it was started in 2015. There are currently, I don't need to go through all of that, 73 members. We joined in 18. And we've got a reference there to Black History Month. I think that that's just a example of some of the work that you can do, but there are totemically, I suppose, or representationally, but there's a lot of detailed work that can be undertaken, including, as I say, data gathering, and then quite difficult but important work around, in the UK at least, around decolonizing the curriculum, ensuring that the lens through which people work and study is not just a white dominated lens. Next slide, please. Athena Swan, again, much more longer standing instrument. As I mentioned, started in 2005. I don't think I need to say, I see that we're running out of time. I don't think I need to say much about that, but there are some examples on the screen. We've done work around recognizing the impact of the menopause, around carers. It's probably a more well-established instrument, and I'm sure some of you will be familiar with it. Next slide, please. Workplace Equality Index for Stonewall. That's not just a higher education sector instrument. Many sectors are involved in it. And I would say that LGBTQ+ equality has become foregrounded much more in the UK in the last 10 years. It's relatively recent in terms of becoming well established as an equality issue, although the law has been there since about 2005. But certainly Sussex is very committed to this work. I might come back to that in a minute, although there are some contested issues. Next slide, please. And finally, Disability Confident, established by the government, again, not just for the UK higher education sector. We are currently at committed level we're currently at employer level, and we're looking to become committed and then ultimately leader, I think. Well, I might have got that the wrong way around, but we're at the start of the journey. Next slide, please. And I suppose I just wanted to finish off by talking about some current and contested issues. And certainly at Sussex, we have found that it isn't always easy to drive these various issues forward simultaneously. There have in the past been differences of opinion between, for example, some religious groups, and religion is an identity which is protected in UK law, generally speaking. Some religious groups and some other identities. In the past, they've been the identity of sex and gender equality, LGBTQ plus equality, and certainly in other thematic areas, there have been disagreements between women's groups and disability groups around, for example, abortion, and there's lots we could talk about in that regard, but I suppose what I wanted to say at the outset is that engagement is critical to drive this forward. Building good relations with constituencies across an institution is absolutely critical. And in fact, that's a piece of work that's at the forefront of my role at the moment. Okay, that's probably time, I think, and for my presentation, but I think we have some time now for a discussion.